Welcome to Basketball Cinema, where we revisit the most important and iconic games in NBA history. I'm Jay Canada, and today we're looking at a Game 1 of the 2006 second round series between the LA Clippers and Phoenix Suns. The 2021 NBA playoffs brought fans a relatively unexpected matchup in the Western Conference Finals. The Phoenix Suns, led by Devin Booker and Chris Paul, taking on the LA Clippers led by Paul George and an injured Kawhi Leonard. The second I personally saw this matchup on paper, I was transported back in time to a different era of the NBA, a time period that I am wildly nostalgic about, 2006. In May of 2006, the Phoenix Suns had just put the finishing touches on Kobe Bryant and the LA Lakers in a wild 7-game series, barely advancing to the second round. Phoenix had transformed into a Western Conference powerhouse the year prior, after signing star point guard Steve Nash and having Mike D'Antoni implement his now infamous 7 seconds or less offensive system.
That's not a team in the NBA can run with the Phoenix Suns. You're going to have to find a way to slow them down.
The Suns lost to the Spurs in the 2005 Western Conference Finals and were dealt a blow prior to the 06 season when leading scorer Amar'e Stoudemire underwent surgery on his knee. He'd miss all but 3 games during the season. Nonetheless, Nash upped his personal output in the regular season to about 19 points, 11 assists per game. Shawn Marion took on a bigger role in the offense, and 23-year-old Boris Diaw broke out as the ultimate utility player for the Suns, winning Most Improved Player for his exploits. As mentioned, and as most all NBA fans know, the Suns were synonymous with running and gunning during this era, but in 06, it was quite literally a necessity. After losing Stoudemire, the Suns roster was smaller than the amount of people who respect Skip Bayless. I mean, it was tiny. In fact, the game you're about to see featured the Suns starting a front court of 6'8" Boris Diaw, 6'7" Shawn Marion, and 6'8" James Jones. Do you see what I mean now? Just like tiny. Nash and the Suns, though, had perfected their style, leading the NBA in scoring by a full 6 points per game over the next closest team. They shot 3 more threes per game than the next closest team, and were far and away the most efficient three-point shooting team in the NBA. Something I find admirable is how the Suns knew the wild limitations their roster had, and that they had to compensate by doubling down on their strengths.
You know, the key for us is just to keep the ball moving, keep our legs going, and get everyone up and down the court, and you know, take away that height advantage.
And as Steve alluded to, this wasn't a great matchup for the Suns. The 2006 LA Clippers are an absolute eclipse of a team, meaning a super bright spot in what otherwise was a ridiculously dark time for the franchise. The Clips had missed the playoffs for 8 straight seasons before 2006, and would go on to miss 5 straight seasons afterwards until the Lob City era revitalized the franchise. See what I mean? Very dark. This version of the other LA team was extremely fun, however. A strong supporting cast of Cuttino Mobley, Sam Cassell, pre-knee injury Sean Livingston, Corey Maggette, Chris Kaman, all built around star forward Elton Brand. We'll do a deeper dive later in the video on Brand, and without spoiling too much from the game we're about to break down, my guy did bad things to the Suns in this series. Like with the Suns, Brand and the Clippers had a great deal of self-awareness with how to attack the matchup with Phoenix.
You know, we can't play their style. They run and gun, they hit a lot of threes, they spread the court. We play low post offense. You know, Chris Kaman, myself, Radmanovic, we want to just post to the side, get the open shooters outside. So
on one side, we've got a team led by a scrawny 6'3" point guard without anything resembling a true big man on their roster. On the other side, a grinded out style of team led by a hulking interior presence. We in for some fun. Let's find out how the original Suns-Clippers playoff series went down. Just prior to tip in Game 1 of the series, Steve Nash was in fact handed the MVP award for the 2006 season by the late commissioner David Stern. It's been a widely and hotly debated topic for well over a decade at this point, Nash winning back-to-back MVPs. And when the topic comes up, I feel a bit like Winston Bishop from New Girl. Don't get me started on it.
I will talk your ear off.
I do concede that when looking back at NBA history, Steve winning both MVPs without any major postseason success to follow, and seeing guys like Shaq and Kobe finish their career with just a single MVP each, I mean, yes, it does stick out like a sore thumb. But Nash was the key to Phoenix transforming overnight into a legitimate title contender in 2005, and he improved his individual game in 2006 despite losing his best teammate to injury. Okay, here I am, just talking your ear off. Just remember, when you put his seasons into the context of the time, it did make a little bit of sense that he won both. Off rip, the Suns with some beautiful high-low action as Boris Diaw ooped to Sean Marion on the finish. Chris Kaman demonstrating the Clippers' size advantage right away, an easy 2 on the interior. Now Suns GM James Jones with a perimeter jumper a minute into the game, a very mid-2000s shot as he took and converted on a shot from right on the 3-point line. Second early activation offensively for Marion as he put through a short corner jumper off the Nash dime. The MVP shortly thereafter getting involved in the scoring for the first time.
Nash, a 3 on the fly, and Steve Nash, with his first attempt, makes it a triple.
But it didn't take long for Elton Brand to get on the board for the first time back the other way. Brand though sagged way off Boris Diaw, allowing the Frenchman to hit a wide open elbow jumper. Steve was deadly from the outside, garnering the respect of the Clips defense as he ran off the line and finished craftily near the rim. The Suns' ball movement was impeccable. Barbosa penetration and kick to Nash, Nash swing to Tim Thomas, and that's money. With just under 3 left in the first quarter, Boris Diaw was the recipient of a picture-perfect pocket pass from Nash, giving the Suns a 10-point cushion. Let's take a quick moment here to discuss one of the most unique players in NBA history, Boris Diaw. Following the 2005 season, Phoenix was unable to agree to terms with young star Joe Johnson, and they eventually dealt him to Atlanta. In return, the Suns received a pair of first-round picks and Boris Diaw. In 2 seasons with the Hawks, Diaw had averaged 4.6 points in 22 minutes per game. Upon arriving in Phoenix though, Boris made it happen. He jumped to averaging 13.3 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 6.2 assists per game. Diaw was thrust into a role that saw him play basically the entire season at power forward or center despite being just 6'8", yet he was moonlighting as a secondary point guard in that role. I mean, he averaged 6 dimes a game. The Suns get credit for revolutionizing the way teams approached offense, specifically their perimeter shooting, and the way they utilize Boris Diaw offensively is just another example of how deadly this exact team would be if they were transplanted to the modern NBA. To close the first quarter, it was Elton Brand and the Clippers showing they belong. A short-range step-back jumper from the post, then a turnaround baby hook from the middle of the paint, finally a clinic put on from the low block, turning Tim Thomas inside and out before converting for 2. To start the second quarter, Chris Kaman taking a turn babying Tim Thomas on the low block, but our guy Boris Diaw answering on the other end, stepping into a wide open triple from the left wing. Defensive specialist Rajah Bell with a pure stroke from the corner for 3, but Corey Maggette checking into the game for LA.
Livingston finds Maggette, who slides in and finds 2 and is fouled on the play.
An acrobatic and 1, Corey averaged a legit 20 points a game over an 8-season stretch at this point in his career. Maggette would actually take over here in the second. Following the and 1, he knocked in a straightaway 3, then off a pin down screen he connected on a free throw line J, and moments later another foot on the line jumper. He was up to 12 in the first half for the Clips. Watch this ridiculous play from Nash. Using his left hand, he tipped in a miss for 2 as an off-ball foul was being called. I mean, how did he do that? Great back and forth at this point in the second. Steve Nash a patented fallback jumper coming off a pick and roll. Elton Brand spinning off Marion and finishing through traffic. Nash running and gunning, pushing the pace without any rim protection in the paint. Tim Thomas a mid-range jumper off the bench. Elton Brand with an answer near the rim. Tim Thomas a triple from the right wing. Elton Brand with an answer off the pull-up J. Yeah, I'm sensing a trend here. The Suns just had no answer for Brand, as Sean Livingston found him in transition for another short jump shot. As Craig Sager was chatting with Coach K, Brand again knocking through a short jumper from the paint. I mean, this is getting ridiculous at this point. It's just 10-foot jumper after 10-foot jumper after 10-foot jumper after 10-foot jumper after 10. The Suns were out of sync to end the half, as Sam Cassell dropped in a foot on the line 2-pointer to take the lead for the Clips, and a young Sean Livingston midi gave them a 5-point lead to take the lead at the break, 23 in the first half for Elton Brand. So at this point in the game, I think it's pretty obvious to all of us, Elton Brand is arguably the greatest big man to ever play in the NBA. Okay, well, maybe that's a stretch, but my guy did look a bit like Ronan the Accuser in this matchup. Brand was undersized, standing at just 6'8", but unlike the Suns' minuscule front line, Elton played with brawn and strength. He played like a man. After winning Rookie of the Year for Chicago in 2000, Brand proved to be a reliable 20-10 guy over the first 6 seasons of his career, but he certainly peaked in 05-06 2006, as with the Clippers, he'd post 25 points, 10 rebounds, and nearly 3 blocks a game on well over 50% shooting for the season. That output was good enough to earn him a second-team All-NBA nod, which is wildly impressive when you consider the depth of star power amongst big men in this era in the NBA. As well, in what would eventually be a 7-game series here against the Suns, Brand would average 31 and 10 in truly dominant fashion. It's too bad the remainder of his prime years were squandered by the Clips, and his vision of transforming the Clippers culture never came to fruition.
We're trying to transform the culture, of the Clippers. Signing Cuttino Mobley, the richest free agent deal in Clipper history, bringing in Sam Cassell via trade, and signing myself, Corey Maggette, to long tenured contracts. I think that just helped turn it around.
Phoenix got back on track early in the third. Raja Bell another money make from the corner. Marion, a wild floater, was off, but he tracked down the board and put it back in. In transition, a prime Steve Nash special.
Nash, the pull-up three. Oh, Steve Nash.
And to put a stamp on the run, it was Marion again slashing down the lane off a timely Nash setup. Game 1 against the Clippers certainly wasn't his finest hour, but Shawn Marion will always have a very special, albeit complicated place in my heart. I'll never forget reading Sports Illustrated for Kids during this Suns era, and seeing Shawn Marion amongst the league leaders in blocks and rebounds despite being just 6'7". Let me tell you that young Jay loved the Matrix for just that reason. During the 4-year stretch Marion played alongside Nash in Phoenix, he averaged 20 points and 11 rebounds per game. Those numbers remain super impressive to me to this day. But when a young Jay Canada grew a bit older and read Jack McCallum's 7 Seconds or Less book, I grew to resent Marion a bit. McCallum recounted how Marion was frequently upset by his lack of fanfare relative to Nash and Stoudemire, as well that he was never considered an MVP candidate. Marion also didn't like playing out of position as a power forward, and all these issues eventually resulted in him requesting to be traded from Phoenix. You ruined a great thing, Sean. The situation looks even worse with hindsight, as Marion would eventually be traded for Shaquille O'Neal, who never truly fit in with Nash and the Suns. That deal was made, by the way, after Marion reportedly vetoed a deal that would have sent him to Boston in a 3-team trade, one that would have sent Kevin Garnett to Phoenix to play alongside Nash and Stoudemire. I can't lie, that hurts just a little bit. The Clippers found a response thanks in large part to veteran Sam Cassell. A midi from the left side of the court, a tough finish inside taking the hit from James Jones and converting, finally a pull-up from the right elbow in transition, and the Clippers back with an 8-point lead. The Suns needed some energy and they found it from their 6-man Leandro Barbosa, somehow getting an and one to go with Kaman draped all over him. Barbosa then slicing to the paint for another tough make. With under 2 minutes left in the third, Elton Brand back to destroying more lives, spinning and flipping with the left hand. Barbosa 3 more of his 17 on the game, but yeah, just watch this.
Brand, he is unbelievable. 15 of 18, Elton Brand.
Like, are you kidding me? The Suns made Elton look like supersized Kobe in this game. Unreal. Fortunately, the Suns executed the final 40 seconds of the quarter to perfection, with Nash slicing to the rim for a deuce to give him 20 on the game, then a third corner triple from Raja Bell off the Boris Diaw find. And oh my goodness, okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
And lead by 2 at the end of 3.
TNT used Fort Minor's Remember the Name as bridge music, and I literally feel like I got punched in the face by nostalgia. I know that's not possible, but it's a great song. It wasn't 10% luck for Cuttino Mobley, it was more like 10% from the field as he made his only field goal of the game to start the fourth. Okay, now this was 10% luck, James Jones taking advantage of a fortuitous bounce on the putback. Elton Brand up to 36 points in the game after yet another jumper in a Suns defender's face. Could I get some concentrated power of will in here stat? The Suns could use it against Elton Brand. My word, Elton really did everything for this team. A huge rejection on the defensive end, which literally set up a Clippers fast break, Sean Livingston the beneficiary. Nash had taken a quick breather to start the fourth, and upon checking back in, this game flipped. He knocked through a pair of free throws, Elton Brand again with the quick answer, but spoiler alert, that would be his second to last hoop of the game. Look at the versatile Boris Diaw knifing to the rim for 2. The Suns were literally bringing a triple team to force the ball out of Brand's hands, and Diaw again offensively with a hanging make. By the way, I should point out, before that Diaw basket, Elton Brand was removed from the game for no apparent reason. I need whatever drugs Mike Dunleavy was on, cause my guy was gone. Chris Kaman was subbed in for Brand and immediately called for an offensive foul. Sean Marion was then fouled and sent to the line where he extended the Suns' lead to 6. The Phoenix lead was then 7 after Leandro Barbosa splashed from deep off another Nash dime, and finally sending the Clips to a timeout, Steve Nash with a crisp pull-up midi. So good news for the Clippers, Elton Brand was put back in the game. Listen, I'm not an NBA coach, but not sure taking out your best player in the 4th, a guy who was literally unguardable, not sure that was a great idea. In any event, it was still a 7-point game, very much within striking distance, but a super tough finish inside from Raja Bell, then a bad pass turnover from Sean Livingston, and that led to another huge shot from Raja Bell. From the corner, again his 4th 3 of the game, and Phoenix was rocking. After a couple free throws from Sam Cassell, under 3 minutes left, the MVP delivered the dagger.
You got the switch now, Nash against Radmanovic, and he steps back and buries the 3. That is their bread and butter play.
Okay, man, wow. Not sure why Doug Collins kept talking there. Could have used an excited Kevin Harlan call of that shot. But indeed, that did give Phoenix a 13-point lead. As garbage time ensued, Nash put in another 4 points to give him 31 points and 12 assists in a near-perfect playoff performance. Sean Marion finished with 20 and 15 on the game, while for the Clippers, Sam Cassell would end up with 28 points, including 21 in the second half, while Elton Brand painted a masterpiece. 40 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 blocks on 18 for 22 shooting. Unfortunately for LA, the Suns sizzled all night and would take game 1 of the 2006 version of this playoff matchup by 7 points, led by MVP Steve Nash. Did I just look ridiculous doing that? I probably did. Maybe we cut that out. I chose to cover game 1 of this series because, well, as we all just saw, game was a banger, but also because the rest of the series was much more of a slugfest. It would go the distance, a full 7 games, with Phoenix eventually taking the Clips down 127-107 in game 7. How crazy that Phoenix played both LA teams in the first 2 rounds, and both series went to 7 games. For the second consecutive season, led by Nash, the Suns made the conference finals, and for the second consecutive season, their run would eventually be ended by a Texas-based team, this time the Dallas Mavericks. While most folks view the 7 seconds or less Suns era as a failure, I view it a bit more with rose-colored glasses. They came up short in their first season together in 2005, which is understandable, and made it just as far in 2006 but without Amari Stoudemire. 2007 was truly the year for Nash and the Suns, and well, the story of how they came up short that time, well, it's a doozy. I'm talking legitimate cheating, league intervention, and scandal type story, but we'll talk about that in another point here on the channel. I don't want to get angry right now. Meanwhile, as mentioned earlier, the 2006 Clippers would prove to be just a blip on the radar during a super dreary 15-season stretch for the other LA team. Despite the heroics of Elton Brand and the supporting cast, the Clips wouldn't return to the playoffs again until Chris Paul arrived in Lob City. I know for a fact though that plenty of longtime Clipper fans view this version of the team as one of their favorites. A scrappy underdog team that was just a game away from making a Western Conference final. It's funny to compare the scrappy underdog 06 Clippers versus the Lob City era Clippers. It's almost like looking at a small indie movie that a lot of people love but understandably makes no impact at the box office versus a highly anticipated, high-budget blockbuster film that also flops at the box office. One of those gets remembered super fondly, the other deemed a failure due to the super high expectations. So basically, the 06 Clippers are Hot Rod and the Lob City Clippers are the second Mark Wahlberg Transformers movie. For each game covered here on Basketball Cinema, I'll be giving out 3 awards, beginning with the Clint Hawkeye Barton Award for Most Underrated Performer.
I don't care.
Which goes to Raja Bell. I've talked at length in this video about Nash, Marion, and Boris Diaw, but Raja deserves some love as well. He dropped 22 points in this game, including a number of pivotal 3 balls, and would go on to average 19 a game for the series, easily the best stretch of basketball in his career. The Rick Dalton Award for Most Recognizable Moment goes to this snippet from a sideline interview Craig Sager did with Mike Krzyzewski, who was in attendance for the game, talking about his plans for the US men's national team program, which he had just taken the reins of.
If we have the cooperation, which I think we will, I think we'll be a very, very formidable team.
Coach K would lead the US to a bronze in 2006 at the World Championships, but was just 2 summers away from coaching arguably the most formidable Olympic team ever assembled in Beijing. And finally, the Mark Jackson,
with all due respect,
award for weirdest moment in this game goes to the coverage and praise heaped on then Clippers owner Donald Sterling by TNT during the broadcast. Obviously, I don't begrudge anyone for singing the praises of the now disgraced former owner of the team, as the NBA world didn't know his true colors at the time, but man, I physically winced each time that piece of garbage was referred to on the broadcast during this game. And that's it. The Phoenix Suns beat the LA Clippers 130-123 in Game 1 on May 8th, 2006. Steve Nash had a legit MVP caliber performance in the playoffs against a truly lovable Clipper squad. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, please consider dropping a like down below, and if you can see yourself watching a few more of these in the future, I'd suggest you hit that subscribe button as well. Also, don't be afraid to leave me a comment down below on literally anything. They all help the YouTube algorithm. Be sure as well to follow me on Twitter at JCanada10 to get a tease for next week's episode. But until then, I'm JCanada, and this has been Basketball Cinema. I chose to cover easily allowing the Frenchman to hit, oh my goodness, 2006. Oh my goodness me. Nash and the Suns, no. They came up short, one of the favorite, but Nash was key. He'd post 25 blocks, 10 rebounds, and Elton Brand's finishing off, oh, that's not a word.